Well, I joined the ISKCON temple in Brooklyn, New York in 1972, October Govardhan Puja. And it wasn't until probably the spring of 1973 that I personally met Srila Prabhupada. I had been with another yoga organization before that, the Integral Yoga Institute, Swami Satchidananda, and we had gone to the temple sometimes and scraped up prasadam from the table and like that. And one time we came and devotees were just mad with ecstasy and flowers were all over the road. So I think I missed Srila Prabhupada at the end of maybe 71 by seconds. But you could feel the ecstasy. So after joining in 72, I was obviously coming from a yoga background, really looking to meet Srila Prabhupada because I wanted to see what kind of aura he had. This was the typical New Age yoga that was going on. So when Prabhupada came out of the back room, Bali Mardan, Shruti Kirti, a number of other devotees, Parikshit's wife was there with her child, and I have that photo. And Prabhupada was walking from the back room, coming through the hallway, and all of us immediately dove and paid obeisances. And I said, I have to see what his aura is. Everybody else was still within paying obeisances, and I popped up. And I looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at me. And the amount of light that I saw was amazing, like the sun. And Prabhupada looked at me and smiled. And I immediately bent down again, kneeled down again, and I said, he is my guru. Up until that, I was still visualizing a lot through Mayavadi eyes. When I first went to the temple, before I joined, I received a Bhagavad-gita when I went to the temple. And there's a whole story in front of that, but basically, it was Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita. The original Macmillan, as it is, Bhagavad-gita. I had read so many Bhagavad-gitas. And when I read that, I read it from 4 in the evening till 4 in the morning, and I put it down and I said, he knows God. All the other Gitas I had read were allegories and analogies and poetic. And this really, really brought it home, that here was someone who finally I could have full faith in, that knew God. It just, Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita was the biggest solidifying things. Other things that occurred before that, receiving a poster and incense in Jamaica, Lord in the Heart Vishnu, with a small piece of paper that came out when I opened it up that said Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, and in English. And I was living up in the mountains of Jamaica doing yoga and was just automatically, Prabhupada came to me before I met him. First from the Gita, and before that through a poster. It was like little things of Prabhupada's presence coming to me. And reading his Bhagavad-gita totally solidified it, and then seeing him, it was finished. 42 years ago, When I had arrived in Vrindavan, in those days, early 70s, Prabhupada was very accessible. Brahmananda would be at the front desk writing, and you'd walk in, he'd say, okay, Shrav, just go. And I'd walk in and Prabhupada was walking around. I had a newspaper where Tirtha Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother that he had mentioned numerous times, had passed away, had left. And it was very interesting in the newspaper article where it said that he had entered into nirvana and had a picture of an aura around his head. So I had this newspaper with me, and I think I was probably fault-finding in some kind of way, that when I brought it up and started to begin describing it, Prabhupada abruptly, in such a powerful way, to stop me from going any further, said, there is never any loss or diminution for any devotional service performed. And that always stuck with me, of trying to avoid too much fault-finding. And I use the word too much because it's such a tendency and nature of the mind. So it was such an instructional moment. At first I felt a little hurt that I may have offended Srila Prabhupada, but then I understood when Prabhupada was doing this with us, how much he was doing it to instruct us. Now we hear it all the time, but when he personally tells you that, it goes right to your heart. So that was a very powerful instruction to me at that time. And then I apologized to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, "No, that is all right." He always would do that. "No, that is all right." And then you get on the ground and just feel like an ant, a microbe, and pay full of obeisances. And Prabhupada, you look up and he's smiling. So that was a very dynamic experience. I was the president of Madras in 76, end of 75, 76. Along with Bhava Budi, we actually became co-presidents. Sravanananda had asked us to be presidents there. And we organized a 10-day program for Srila Prabhupada to come, front page articles in the Hindu newspaper, and we had tens of thousands of people coming. And when Srila Prabhupada arrived with a number of our God brothers, entourage, off the airplane, coming in the door to the waiting area, Tamal, Krishna Maharaj, and Harikesh, and Hari Sori, etc., etc. We were all there gathered. The devotees who weren't flying in had come by land, many other older God brothers, Guru Kripa, and we were beginning to have a raging kirtan as Srila Prabhupada came off the stairs of the plane onto the tarmac, and all the people in the airport were starting to gather. We had many life members and guests who had piles of garlands in their hands. And as Srila Prabhupada opened the door and the kirtan was raging and conch shells were blowing and he began to walk inside the door 10, 15 feet, he stopped. And at that point, as the kirtan is raging, people began putting garlands over his head. Problem was, people were so excited to put garlands over his head that his face began to disappear. So we had to immediately get someone to remove as they put and remove as they put to keep the garlands just by his chin, because it was starting to come up higher. And all of that combined, and everybody being in ecstasy, Srila Prabhupada just smiled, and this wave of ecstasy flowed through that room, and everybody was looking at each other. I mean, people were literally leaping 10 feet in the air. But everybody looked at each other like, "Did you feel that?" Because everybody felt that power. It probably just stopped and just, again, lit up with that wonderful smile of ecstasy that we saw so many times. So it was a wonderful arrival of Srila Prabhupada. The experience was amazing. We had a nice facility for Srila Prabhupada to stay with a life member. We were going to head to Nellore to do the temple that Mahamsa tried to arrange after the program. But Prabhupada was there for 10 days every night. We had a Gujarati man who spoke 14 languages that would translate into Tamil. The governor was there of Tamil Nadu, but he was actually Gujarati. And every night was an ecstatic program. You can hear actually the audio in 76 where it says Madras, and then after that is Nellore. And they're just wonderful, wonderful lectures, wonderful questions from the people of South India. And one night when Prabhupada, we had a small house in Madras, in Kilpak. But Prabhupada would always come for lunch prasad at the temple. It's like a temple house. But he would stay at the life members at night. So one day he came and they said, "So Sravanananda, are you going to cook for Prabhupada?" I said, "Well, I've never cooked for Prabhupada before, so I'm nervous." So Harikesh said, "I'll cook." So we made a little sitting area for Srila Prabhupada and a choki and a tully. And Harikesh was cooking in the back, and we had drumstick trees that Prabhupada loved drumsticks, whether it was in Vrindavan. I don't know if you're familiar with drumsticks. It's very popular in sambar and South Indian cooking, but Prabhupada would go to Vrindavan and come back with a bundle of drumsticks. And with the trees, he said, "Make sure you make drumsticks." He said, "Drumsticks are very good for the heart." And Harikesh was cooking, and I was serving Prabhupada on his plate, trying to do it all right, and I brought a chapati. Prabhupada touched it like this. And he looked at me and said, "Chapati means hot." So I ran back to Harikesh and said, "Prabhupada's saying chapati means hot." He says, "Okay, I'll cook the chapati and you run." And it's marble, the floors, literally sliding to give it to Srila Prabhupada. I would say it's only 20 feet, 25 feet, 30 feet at the most. And I would slide it and try to put it on Prabhupada's plate quickly. Prabhupada would tap the chapati. He would say, "Chapati means hot." So then I ran back to Harikesh. I said, "Prabhupada is not eating the chapatis." He said, "Chapati means hot." So he puffed up a chapati like a puri, I ran and slid to Prabhupada, put it on his plate. He poked the chapati that was puffed up. Steam came out. Prabhupada said, "Ah, that is chapati." So in instructional, I've always remembered that. I hate a flat chapati. I love it when you get a hot chapati and you touch it and the steam comes out. Always remembering what Prabhupada had taught me. So then we had a wonderful program, and we were driving one day in a Mercedes with me and Hari Sori in the front seat, and Prabhupada, Hari Kesh, and Tamal in the back. Now I'm trying to keep getting a little glimpse and look back at Srila Prabhupada, just to have darshan. And I'm looking, and I'm seeing Tamal. He's like a little bit sleepy. And I turn around, and Tamal has got his head on Prabhupada's shoulder, snoring. And I turned around to Prabhupada quickly, and Prabhupada's love and compassion, like it was his child, was like, "Don't wake him, don't wake him." And at that moment, I saw another aspect of Srila Prabhupada that was just so amazing. His love, his kindness, his compassion. I mean, we're lowly disciples. He's a Shaktivesh avatar, wonderful, divine, pure devotee, and how much love he had. And seeing those things, sometimes you don't see it unless it's in real life or in videos. Prabhupada had those qualities that were always so compassionate, so amazing. So Hari Sori and I were kind of laughing about it, and Prabhupada was like, just, let him sleep, let him sleep. Very kind. So when Srila Prabhupada was going to go to Nellore from Madras after this wonderful program, we had it in a big wedding hall, and we were going to go by train. So we decided to hire what's called in North India or Bengal, a Shehnai group. Shehnai with the little trumpet, saxophone, flute type, clarinets, and drums. In South, it's even more traditional with big drums and big trumpets and big... So we organized one to guide Prabhupada down the train station platform to his coach, which was all prepared for him with white sheets and flowers, and devotees were sitting that were always with him and his servant in that coach. And Prabhupada just loved. He loved Nageshwaram like he liked Shehnai. We got to the train and we went to Nellore, which is in Andhra Pradesh, and we had been donated a piece of land that was going to be having a temple built. And we did the installation of Ananta Shesh. Mahamsa had arranged the land. And we found out later, we were starting to get some kind of little tidbits of information that things weren't quite right. We actually found out that they were putting in the clause in the contract and the land donation that if it's not built within a certain period of time, they're going to take the land back. So you could literally have completed 90% of the building. And so Prabhupada said, "That's ridiculous. Take the Ananta Shesh back, we're going." But up until that point, these people from Andhra Pradesh were non-veg. And they were cooking vegetarian for us, but we started noticing like things in the yogurt, forget the yogurt preparation that you eat has sometimes tomatoes, cucumbers, also had some onions in it. Devotees mentioned it to Prabhupada. He said, "We are their guest, ignore for now." So another point of just Prabhupada's tolerance, looking at the big picture. So we went on a morning walk before leaving Nellore, and Mr. Trivedi, who was a lawyer, actually a lawyer for Chinmayananda, and a good friend of ours in translating, came with us on the morning walk. Now he had told us at the Gaudiya Math in Madras, they like to talk badly about our organization. And, we heard some of the things he told us, but he told us that to let us be informed what was going on and try to avoid them too. But he had told me that they actually had said that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to spread the holy name in every town and village, he would have done it himself. So we're on the morning walk in Nellore, and Mr. Trivedi's with me, and you'll hear him in the tapes. He'll be asking questions, and Prabhupada's answering him, and I'm standing next to him, and I'm saying, "Bring up that thing about what they said at the Gaudiya Math." Prabhupada turns around and said, "Why you were talking while I'm talking?" You'll hear that in the tape. It just says devotee in the tape, but Ekanath corrected it in the archives. And Prabhupada was obviously getting interested in what was being said there. And when Mr. Trivedi said to Prabhupada that how the Gaudiya Math had said that if they wanted to spread it in every town and village, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have done it himself. Prabhupada raised his cane and said, he has left the credit for me. And all the devotees just went, Jai, Hari Bol, Srila Prabhupada, with a big smile on his face. And I always thought about that for years, that if anybody were to ever say that in the material world, you'd think they have an ego. But you could see Prabhupada was egoless. He said it in an ecstatic way as a servant of Lord Chaitanya. And it's a very, very powerful thing that it's. So I'm happy that Prabhupada chastised me for talking while he was talking, but I'm happy I also brought that up because it was just an amazing experience to hear that, very powerful statement. One other thing, when Prabhupada was staying at the Life Members' Home in Madras, he was talking with all of us and the Life Members and having a nice conversation. And devotee brought up at the Parthasarthi Temple in downtown Madras, which we did programs at. They're very nice people there. It's Parthasarthi. So they had a mustache on Krishna. So devotees brought this up to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, Krishna does not have mustache. He said, Krishna has like peach fuzz of a young man just going through adolescence. And he said, Nava Yovanam, eternally youthful. He said, there is no mustache on Krishna. So it was very nice that Prabhupada took his finger to his lip as though he was, he used the word peach fuzz too, like little light hairs. Prabhupada was explaining Krishna has no mustache because he's Nava Yovanam. So that was a really nice experience too. And then one time in Vrindavan, we would go every morning in the early days when it was just huts and the Vrindavan temple was being built. Just go out with Prabhupada every morning, and there was no construction anywhere except sand and some little bit of cement and steel coming up. So all the roads were just agriculture, and we would take a mat and Prabhupada would sit on the side of the road and call over Mayavadis and chastise them, speak in Hindi with them for a while, and then get into a debate with them, a heated debate. They were always respectful, and they would leave, and Prabhupada, but he was showing us the fierceness of challenging the Mayavadi philosophy. And I once asked him, Srila Prabhupada, people are so stuck in darkness. How do you tell a person who's blind, that there's vision, that there's light when they've never experienced it? And Prabhupada said, prasadam. He said, prasadam is the most important thing to bring people out of darkness. So that was also a very major thing I've always remembered, because I know that you had mentioned earlier about how I was first influenced. That's how I pretty much moved in the temple. That was like the last, straw, nice straw. It didn't break the camel's back, but broke my attachment to anything. And to move in was the prasadam. It was Govardhan Puja. And mountains of prasadam. And basically slept on the prasadam floor that night, just keeled over. And so Prabhupada's program of prasadam, you don't find this in any other yoga group. I had eaten so many, Sri Chimoy, this one, that one, whoever you're going to mention, and everything was very, very spicy, but there was nothing like the cooking that we had in those early days in the temples. The prasadam was just amazing, and the devotees had so much love and devotion, and it was opulent. And that was another big thing to make us join in those days. Most devotees I've spoken with. And Prabhupada reiterated it there right on the side of the road in Vrindavan, how important it was. We were so violently sick at that Mayapur festival. I can't remember if it was 74 or 75, because I arrived in India December 73, so it might have been 74. And things in those days, they were using very, very bad oils, which we eventually got ghee from Holland, containers full that Prabhupada was very pleased about. And everybody was violently sick. Literally everyone. And there's a portico type rail covered area on the outside of the first, Lotus building, the guest house. So we were all laying there on mats and whatever we had. And we could barely pay obeisances to Prabhupada or turn over to even acknowledge it, but we tried our best. And Prabhupada was walking around and very disturbed that everyone was so sick, so he called a homeopathic doctor. And I remember the homeopathic doctor, he couldn't even put it in our hand and give us a glass of water. which in homeopathy, you just put it in your mouth and dissolve it. He personally put the pill in everyone's mouth, and Prabhupada was also walking around near him, around him, constantly seeing the devotees and observing. And within literally minutes after the pill went in our mouth, Prabhupada, whoever he was in the area, was very happy. And we woke up and out of a slumber of unconsciousness and a very bad disease to almost being fully conscious, like, what just happened? What just happened? And I never thought about it too much until decades later, where I really felt that Prabhupada was performing a miracle. He was present, he ordered the doctor to come there, and I don't believe to this day that one little white pill could have made us go from such a state of diseased consciousness and dysentery and whatever to be standing up and ready to do service again. There was like very little time frame in being so bad to so good. So many years later, I really felt that was a miracle that Prabhupada had performed. Whenever Prabhupada would come to Mayapur, drive down Bhaktisiddhanta Road, we would greet him quite far down the road, and the car would slow down, and we'd have a raging kirtan and bring Prabhupada, not bring Prabhupada, but follow and be in front of the car and on the side of the car while Prabhupada was in the car, bringing him to the entrance of Mayapur building. And at this Mayapur festival, Prabhupada walked in, and before he did anything, he just walked in and sat on the Vyasasan. Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasan and became very grave. Now, devotees that were there, and I know Hamsaduta would remember this because that'll come and segue into that part of the story. All of a sudden, things were very bright outside, and I don't think we had electricity. So the light in the temple room appeared to be disappearing and dissipating, almost like a cloud covering the sun. And everybody became very, very sober, and instead of singing Jaya Radha Madhava or leading into giving a lecture, Prabhupada just started talking. In this very kind of different lightness within the temple, Prabhupada's color seemed to change. And Prabhupada said that in your previous life you were all associates of Lord Chaitanya. And he said, somehow or another, I have been designated or assigned as the captain of this ship. But you have actually done everything to spread this Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada went into ecstasy. He just sat there, went into ecstasy, and the whole room was frozen in time. And everybody was feeling it because everybody was looking to the side, to the other devotee next to them, like, are you feeling this? Could barely talk. And Prabhupada wasn't speaking for a long time. And I don't think anybody wanted this experience to stop. And all of a sudden, off to the right side of the temple room, I remember Hamsaduta picking up the mridanga and starting to chant Hare Krishna, which seemed to break like the almost samadhi-like ecstatic mood. And I know my experience at that was anger towards Hamsaduta for breaking this ecstatic wave that we were all in that boat with our captain together. So that was over, but I heard later that devotees went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, when this happens to you, is this what we should do? Hamsaduta was there and some other devotees were there. And I heard, this is secondhand, that Prabhupada said, yes, that's okay, but it doesn't happen so often, does it? So that was, I mean, I can't grade every different experience, but I'd say this is one of the most directly ecstatic, powerful experiences that I had felt. There was definitely color change in Prabhupada's face. The room had become dark, and nobody said a word. I don't know if it was eternity or minutes, but it felt like eternity until Hamsaduta broke it with a kirtan. I was working with Tejas Das in Delhi in the early days. That would have been around early 74. I had first arrived in Vrindavan, and Tejas really wanted my help and for collecting and building the Vrindavan temples, so I went there. And some 6, 9 months, 10 months later, Sravanananda had come through and said, Sravananda, I really need a president in Madras. Would you mind? You know, I said, okay. You know, I spoke to Tejas. So Prabhupada was there at the temple. And I was heading to Vrindavan first. I wanted to go to Vrindavan and have darshan before I went down south. And Prabhupada was actually down below this little stairway and circumambulating Tulsi and chanting japa. He had his little Prabhupada hat on. It was winter. So it was probably possibly late 74. And I didn't know Prabhupada was there. And I'm like kind of escaping to go down to South India and go to Vrindavan first. And I just got down and paid obeisances to Prabhupada. And he said, where are you going? I'm like, uh-oh. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm going to Vrindavan before I go down to Hyderabad. And Prabhupada said, oh, then you can come with us. We're going also. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to squeeze into the car, and Tejas is going to give me a little bit of chastisement, and anybody else, like, why are you coming, Shrav? There's no room. I said, Srila Prabhupada, no, that's okay. I'll just take the train. He says, no, we'll make room. I said, no, it'll be too tight, Srila Prabhupada. Says, then we'll squeeze you in. And I'm like debating with Srila Prabhupada that I, can't go in the same car with him, but I know possible repercussions as a new brahmachari. So I said, no, that's okay. So Prabhupada kind of at one point said, all right then. He said, then please, when you arrive, you'll probably arrive before us. Tell Guru Das to arrange my bed on the roof. Because in those days we had very little electricity, no fans, no air conditioning, so we slept on the roof to try to get some breeze. So I arrived in Vrindavan, and I immediately told Guru Das, I said, this is what Srila Prabhupada told me. He said, okay, we'll make the bed on the roof. And then after that, Prabhupada arrived. So I was there to greet him at the car. Well, two things really stood out to me. One was, this was the early days where various people were starting to get very fancy suitcases, like Halliburton and Hartman and like that. And Prabhupada got out of the car, and first thing he said, so you made arrangements? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. His little suitcase was, in probably real dollars in those days, $5 or $10, with a rope tied around it. I mean, like something you would have gotten Woolworths, which most people don't even know that, And I just said, oh my God, this is such a symptom of such a pure devotee. You see so many other things in life, but here is my guru again showing us simplicity and true minimalism and humility. So it was just another excitement to see again the purity of my guru. Another instructional lesson about the importance of reality and being a Vaishnav. I had come back to America for collecting for Mayapur. When we were having the big Rath Yatra in New York, I don't remember the first really big one that we had there. Was it 75? But Jayananda was still there. Prabhupada was there. We had the West 55th building. I got a crew from Long Island. And I wanted to do it in 16 millimeter, which in those days was a bigger format. And they were professionals. They had an editing studio. It was a lot of editing, adding music. They were up in the windows of the buildings. I mean, they really took some great footage of the Rath Yatra Festival. It was just a random thing that I did. Nobody had told me to do it because I was going back to India. And in India, we had a briefcase projector. We'd pop it open and we could put it on a desk and people could watch movies right on the desk, or we could flip the lens and reflect it onto a large sheet like in the villages. So I wanted to show people the Rath Yatra. Just pure Rath Yatra, nothing else, and music and chanting. So we put this whole movie together, compiled it, put it in Fairchild cassettes, and when I arrived in Vrindavan, Adi Keshav was in New York when I filmed the movie. He said, Sravanananda, show it to Prabhupada. So I was in Madras actually at the time. I was just in America collecting maybe from Madras or visiting family. So I popped open the Fairchild, many devotees were there, and I started showing the movie. And Prabhupada really liked it, so I was very happy I could please him. And first thing he said was, they think we're CIA in Bengal. He said, how would they think we're CIA and put on a Rath Yatra in Manhattan? What CIA would put on a Rath Yatra in Manhattan? And he knew that I was, in Madras. We had letters exchanged and we were going to build a temple there. We were having great response. And Prabhupada said like this, he said, would you mind going to Bengal and showing this in every town and village? I was totally entrenched in Madras. I never thought of it. When Prabhupada said that, I said, Srila Prabhupada, whatever you want. Prabhupada, he's so humble the way he asked that. It wasn't like, go to Bengal and, would you mind? I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, not at all. And then devotees said, yeah, Baba Booty's there, he could cover. And that's when I went to Bengal and went village to village on buses, all over Bengal, from the Bay of Bengal to Darjeeling to Assam, to Guwahati. We showed the movie on screens. We had reporters who came and said about the movie. We were on the boat program, in the Nitai Pada Kamala, one of the earliest things, 3 months in the Ganges. And we were distributing Gitar Gans, the little Gitar Gan that was Prabhupada's wonderful little production. And I wrote a letter one time. We were thinking of meeting Srila Prabhupada in Kumbh Mela, but the devotees were so fired up that they just wanted to distribute lots of books. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada and said we had just distributed that month 16,000 Gitar Gans. Prabhupada wrote a letter back so happy and said, that is very results. I'll always remember that that is very results. And we were very happy that we could please him and serve him in separation. Prabhupada's instructions in his books were extremely powerful, and his desire to save every living entity within the universe by the distribution of not only his books but paraphernalia, the spiritual sky incense to the poster. I mean, it was like Prabhupada was all pervasive as Chaitya Guru. Wherever you went, whether I was hiking across America and seeing devotees in Vancouver or Boulder, I mean, by Prabhupada's mercy, all he wanted to do was to save everyone in this world. And just so much contact with devotees and paraphernalia. And then finally Prabhupada, it just culminated in the massive nuclear explosion of his radiance and sun and seeing him for the first time in Brooklyn. Now, I was sitting with what is now the head of the Integral Yoga Institute, and he was my friend. And we were sitting in a car, and he had long hair and a beard, and I still had very short hair like now. And I was with that yoga group, and we were opening up a black and white Back to Godhead. Again, another mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And he was opening up this magazine, and I said to him, do you think you could ever become a Hare Krishna? He said, yeah. And I said, I don't think I could. So he's the head of the Integral Yoga Institute now, and I actually became a devotee. So Prabhupada's mercy is so powerful. His mercy was so powerful that no matter how hard I try to get away, he's always there and pulling us in. It was an old black and white Back to Godhead, and just kind of freaked me out. But then I saw a devotee on a train in New York, smelling of incense, beautiful, attractive cloth, kirtan on the train, giving out books. Prabhupada's influence was truly all-pervasive. But he was always gracious. When he was a guest at someone's house, he wasn't a king. He was always a servant. He was always there to serve even his own disciples. All the other gurus, the relationship was very odd. It was just a ladder I was climbing, but very quickly disillusioned. And I've never looked backwards. I've never ever thought I needed anyone else. I need my God brothers and other devotees association, but other than another guru, everything is there in Prabhupada's books. It was his Bhagavad-gita that changed my life, because I had read so many, from Gandhi to this one, Vivekananda, whoever I could get my hands on, and I just didn't feel anything. There's just nothing there. I read Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita, it was one pure realization in every word. And just his kindness. I'll tell you where I felt his greatest kindness when I listened to audio of Prabhupada with that doctor in Bombay on the morning walks. And I'd been with many morning walks there also, whether it be Madras or Bombay. I forgot his name, if it was Patel but all devotees know him because he would ask aggressive, somewhat condescending, irritable questions to Prabhupada. I never saw Prabhupada upset with him once. sometimes have to turn off my audio of Prabhupada when that man's asking questions because it just seems so offensive to me. But Prabhupada liked that because he knew that the whole world was challenging this philosophy and he was letting us see how to deal with a person. It was almost like Prabhupada was doing the Chinese water torture, because I met that man after Prabhupada left and he was crying like a child. So Prabhupada did that. He wore him away, because he never got angry. Just kept answering his questions beautifully. Then he would challenge Prabhupada. But he loved Prabhupada, but we couldn't see it because of his challenging way. But he loved Prabhupada, and Prabhupada didn't mind. And he actually kept, Prabhupada was requesting him to come to Kumbh Mela. And he kept, like with me going to Vrindavan, and he kept saying, no, I can't go on this road. He eventually went with Prabhupada, from what I heard, to Kumbh Mela. So just the qualities were just amazing. And anytime Prabhupada chastised us, it was 5 seconds of pain and just thousands of hours of ecstasy, because it was like cleansing. And it wasn't often, but I've had the cane raised at me, I think, twice for maybe talking to someone behind him, or that was usually it. I didn't want to say too much on morning walks because of that, and I stayed a little bit behind sometimes, but it was always ecstatic. I never once had a doubt to this day, and I'm just so happy I found Prabhupada. Or he found us. He was looking for us, and just pure mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu